In the summer of 1994, the desert felt like a secret. Wind rolled low over the hills near the San Relin Basin, kicking up whispers of sand along the cracked edges of Route 62. Towns like Severance Bend were reduced to road signs and dust, the kind of place you drove through without noticing. Emily Rourke and Jonah Bell didn't plan to stop there, but the sun was starting to drop behind the ridgeline, and they had been driving for hours with nothing but a stack of burned CDs and the scratchy voice of a local FM station guiding them west. They were in their mid-20s, not long out of school, both restless. Jonah was a systems analyst who hated cubicles, and Emily taught part-time art classes to fifth graders. They'd met in Tucson, moved to Phoenix, and had been saving for this road trip since winter. California was the destination, a mix of campsites, forgotten diners, and beach mornings. The itinerary wasn't written down, just outlined on a folded-up paper map, with loose stars drawn near things like Joshua Tree and Morro Bay. That Friday, they made their way out of Phoenix by noon. Emily had filled a thermos with iced coffee. Jonah brought a disposable camera, and they took turns singing badly to each other as they drove. It was the kind of drive where nothing felt dangerous, just empty, just quiet. Their last confirmed stop was a gas station at the edge of Severance Bend. The receipt, found days later, showed they bought trail mix, AA batteries, a bottle of ginger ale, and a postcard neither of them would ever send. The cashier didn't remember much about them. He told detectives later that they looked happy enough. Surveillance footage showed them walking back to their car at 8:03 p.m. Emily paused to adjust her hair in the passenger side mirror. Jonah, smiling, gave a thumbs up to someone off camera. They drove off 5 minutes later, heading north. They never made it to their next stop. 3 days later, their car was found parked beside a rest stop that had been officially shut down since 1989. The building still stood graffiti-covered walls, shattered windows, dry plumbing, but there was no electricity. The engine was off. The keys were still in the ignition. A Neil Young cassette sat mid-reel in the stereo, the tape itself loose, like it had been yanked and wound back in a hurry. No signs of a struggle, no fingerprints beyond theirs. The couple's belongings were still inside backpacks: a water jug, a paperback novel Emily had been reading, a pair of hiking boots, but there was no trace of either of them. The case was opened and quietly closed. The local department was small, underfunded. Theories ranged from voluntary disappearance to desert crime, to something unexplainable. But with no leads and no bodies, nothing stuck. The files were boxed and stored. The desert swallowed their names. And then, in 2014, 20 years later, the ground broke open. A geological survey team, working with the state's Department of Land and Resources, was conducting erosion testing near a collapsed mine shaft a half-mile from the old rest stop. While drilling, one of the sensors picked up a hollow chamber beneath the rock. Not a natural formation, something sealed. Excavation revealed a metal hatch, heavily rusted and bolted shut. When opened, it led to a space no larger than a walk-in closet. Inside, a cassette tape labeled 10.04/94, a map with faint markings in pencil, and a disposable Kodak camera. No identifying names, no dates on the map, no blood, but the cassette still worked. When the team turned the findings over to the county sheriff's office, the items were logged and set aside. The case might have been ignored again, had it not ended up on the desk of Detective Laura Denham, a recent transfer from missing persons who had a personal habit of reading old cases during lunch. Emily and Jonah's file had been sitting in storage for 2 decades, mostly forgotten. The minute Denham read the summary, something about it grabbed her. Not just the mystery, but the silence around it. She played the tape herself that night in her office. At first, static, then footsteps, the shuffle of fabric, wind, a car door slamming shut. Then, at 27 minutes and 19 seconds, a voice, low, male, very close to the microphone. Back again, back again, back again. Over and over. Then a metal clang, something like a hinge being shut. Then silence. Except it wasn't quite silence. Denham had the audio enhanced. Beneath the quiet, you could just barely make out a soft mechanical humming, steady and rhythmic. A generator? Or something older? And ticking. A clock, maybe. She sent the Kodak camera out for development. 6 images were returned. 3 were useless, overexposed by heat or time. 2 were landscapes, flat, washed-out desert scenes with nothing notable. But the 6th photo was something else. It showed a small room, white walls, a floor covered in dust, a vent in the ceiling, a mirror bolted to the far end. In front of the mirror, a pair of boots, tan, scuffed, size 11. Jonah's size. Denham stared at that image for nearly an hour. That was when she pulled the original case file from the archives. And that was when she noticed something strange. The old zoning report for the rest stop listed a secondary structure, a maintenance shed behind the main building. But when she visited the site in person, the shed was gone. Only the concrete foundation remained. The hinges, rusted and twisted, still sat embedded in the slab. She ordered a scan. The dogs hit within 20 minutes. Beneath the slab, buried in a box of dry-packed soil, was another chamber, this one deeper. And inside it, they found something no one was ready for. It took 3 days to safely excavate the buried space. The walls were lined with dense foam insulation, the kind used in industrial soundproofing. There were no windows, no vents, and no door, only a narrow entry sealed with poured concrete. It had been designed not to be entered again. Once inside, Denham stood in silence as her flashlight traced along the far wall. Scratches, dozens of them. Fingernail-deep gouges across the drywall, concentrated in a 5-foot space beside the corner. Some lines were shallow, others dug through to the gypsum beneath. There were no furnishings, no clothing, nothing but a second cassette tape, unmarked, placed carefully in the center of the floor. Denham sent it to audio processing that same evening. The voice that came back on the recording was female, soft but frayed at the edges. "It's still Tuesday," she whispered. She repeated it, again and again, 6 times total. Then a loud click, like the tape had been shut off. No screams, no struggle. Just one phrase, repeated like a countdown or a ritual. Denham compared the voice to a home video submitted by Emily's sister back in 1994. It was a match. Emily had been alive. Not just at the rest stop, not just near the scene. In that room, after everyone thought she was gone, Denham ordered a second scan of the area, a wider radius this time. She wanted to know how far the underground structure went. 3 days later, her team uncovered a crawl space. It extended north beneath the bluff, and when they reached the end of the shaft, they found another chamber, this one larger, with remnants of human presence. Blankets, shelving, empty food cans. A vent that connected to nothing. And a mirror, identical in size and frame to the one from the photograph. But this one was shattered. Etched into the remaining shards, reversed as if meant to be read only in reflection, were 7 words. "If you're reading this, I'm still alive." The analysis confirmed it wasn't scratched with a tool. It was written in blood. Denham's forensic team lifted a partial DNA profile. Jonah Bell. Alive 2 weeks after the date of their disappearance. He had been in that room? Somewhere along the way, someone had kept them both alive, unseen, unheard. But the question remained, who? Denham went back to the 1994 investigation. She dug through permit records and construction filings tied to the rest stop before its closure. Most were mundane, plumbing work, electrical upgrades. But one name stood out. Charles H. Danvers. He was a contractor with a now-defunct maintenance company, Divide Management Services. Between 1992 and 1995, he held the contract for 5 desert rest stops, including Severance Bend. He was never interviewed in the original case. Danvers dissolved the company in 1996. No forwarding address. Only a P.O. box tied to a warehouse in Riverside, California. Denham made the trip. The warehouse was long abandoned. Inside were rows of file cabinets, blueprints, and decaying cardboard boxes. One folder, marked Severance Archive, contained hand-drawn sketches of rest stop infrastructure. Not just plumbing or lighting, but walls that didn't appear on any official map. Hidden rooms. False backs in storage closets. Even the mirror marked in one drawing as bidirectional surveillance. Two-way glass. Denham realized something that chilled her. The photo found in the Kodak camera, the one showing the boots in front of the mirror, hadn't been taken from inside the room. It had been taken from the other side of the glass. Someone had been watching. And when Denham requested analysis of the mirror's mounting bolts in the crawlspace, the lab confirmed they were installed from the outside. A surveillance room had existed, and someone had kept it running. She returned to the site. Behind a cracked foundation, nestled in a cavity of rock, was a narrow tunnel, no more than 3 feet wide. At the end, a metal chair, a wall of empty hooks, and a desk. On the desk, a notebook. Every page was filled. Each line, a name, a date, and a number. Rourke E. Bell, J. 27. At the bottom of the list, 61. Current. The most recent entry was dated October 2014. Denham stared at the final page. No name was listed. Just a sentence. You've seen enough. The crawlspace was swept for prints. None found. Hair samples. None. No scent trails. But the dust was fresh. Someone had been there recently. A motion sensor camera was placed at the tunnel entrance. It recorded nothing. For 7 nights. Then, on the 8th, at 3:19 a.m., the camera flickered on. A figure, backlit by a flashlight. Male, tall, wearing what looked like a maintenance uniform. The patch over his chest read, "Property of Divide Services." He stood still, looked directly into the camera, then turned and walked away. His face was never seen. The footage was shared with the FBI. No identification matched. No active licenses for that company existed. No paper trail. Divide Services, for all purposes, had never existed except here, in this canyon, in this echo of silence. The press got wind of the case. Headlines flared. Desert Chamber Mystery. Couple vanished found too late. Investigative podcasts ran specials. Amateur sleuths camped near the rest stop, hoping to catch a glimpse of something. Denham didn't speak to the media. She was working on something else. The tape. The first one. She ran it through spectrographic analysis. Beneath the voice, "Back again," were layered sounds. Not mechanical. Human. Breathing. 2 sets. One lab technician speculated that the tape had been looped and overwritten multiple times. The voice wasn't recorded once. It had been repeated deliberately, like a mantra. Back again, back again, back again. And on the 6th loop, only audible with high compression, a whisper. "Don't forget who you are." Detective Laura Denham didn't sleep that night. The whisper at the end of the tape gnawed at her, not just the words, but the way they sounded. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't a warning. It was calm. Measured. Like someone saying something they'd said hundreds of times before. Like a script. She pulled every file related to Divide Services into her investigation. There were 5 former employees listed in the original company registration from 1992. 3 had disconnected numbers. 1 was deceased. The 5th, a man named Reuben Vass, had a last known address in Nevada. She made the call. A woman answered Vass's sister. Reuben had been missing since 2002. No police report filed. She claimed he just wandered off one day, said he wasn't right after working in the desert. He kept repeating things in his sleep, drawing boxes, talking about crawling under. When she pressed her for details, the line went quiet. Then the woman said, "He told me once, the mirrors go both ways." I thought he was being paranoid. Denham ended the call with her stomach hollow. Back at the evidence locker, she pulled the original photo of the white-walled room, the one with the boots in front of the mirror. She had it digitally enhanced. When the exposure was deepened and the contrast lifted, faint outlines became visible in the mirror. Not a reflection, a figure. Just the edge of a sleeve, a bent elbow, the form of someone holding something up with a camera. Whoever took the photo had been watching from behind the mirror, watching and documenting. She ran a facial reconstruction of Jonah Bell through missing persons databases, just to confirm there had been no unidentified matches over the years. Nothing. No John Doe reports, no unclaimed remains. They had simply vanished, but someone had preserved their presence, archived it. As she dug deeper, Denham found another oddity. In 1995, a complaint had been filed by a utility worker who claimed to have seen lights flickering inside the rest stop at Severance Bend, even though the building had no power. His name was Emery Phelps. He had died in 2001, but the original statement remained. I saw a flicker in the side mirror of my truck. Thought it was lightning at first, then it pulsed again. Same spot, like someone was inside with a flashlight, turning it on and off, in a rhythm. But the windows were dark. Nobody came out. I called it in. They told me not to worry. Said that place had been sealed since '89. Denham sent an inquiry to the local utility board. No logs of electricity service to that rest stop between 1989 and 2014. No generators listed. No authorized connections. So where had the light come from? She returned to the site with a portable EMF scanner and a forensic photographer. The plan was simple. Photograph every square inch. Log every trace. No stone left unturned. The photographer, young and eager, set up his gear facing the main foundation slab. Just as he snapped the first test image, the LCD screen flickered. Static filled the viewfinder. Then, just before it returned to normal, a single frame blinked past. A pair of eyes, wide, pressed to glass. The image didn't save, but he saw it. Denham saw it. They checked the glass. No prints. Nothing. Just a smear of dust disturbed near where the mirror had once been. That night, Denham reviewed all existing footage from the trail cam left at the tunnel. Rewatched the man in the maintenance uniform. The way he moved. The calm of it. There was no urgency. No fear of discovery. It was like he expected to be seen or didn't care if he was. At 4:13 a.m., exactly 1 hour after that sighting, a VHS tape arrived at the front desk of the county sheriff's department. No return address, no label, just a plain, yellowed envelope. Inside, a video that changed everything. The footage was grainy, black and white, time-stamped October 26, 1994. A white room, no door visible. In the center sat Emily Rourke, cross-legged. Still, she didn't blink for the first 20 seconds. Then slowly, her eyes turned toward the camera. She blinked once, then again. That was it. The video ended. No audio, no context. But it was her. Same freckles, same narrow scar beneath her jaw from a childhood fall, confirmed by dental analysis and facial recognition. Emily had been alive 3 weeks after she disappeared, held in that room, and someone had recorded her. The footage was passed to the FBI. Analysts enhanced the background. One oddity emerged. The wall behind her wasn't flat. There were indentations as if paper had been taped there, then removed. Faint outlines of rectangles, 4 across, 2 high. Pictures. Whoever had held her there had decorated the room with something, maybe photographs, maybe diagrams, maybe others. In the corner of one frame, barely visible, was a calendar. Only one word legible, Tuesday. Denham remembered the second cassette. It's still Tuesday. The same word, frozen in time. She began to wonder, had they been kept awake, kept disoriented? Had their sense of days and nights been erased? This wasn't just abduction, it was psychological conditioning. Captivity designed not just to hold the body, but to unmake identity. To reduce names to numbers. To catalog. Jonah and Emily weren't just missing. They had been part of a system, a sequence. And that notebook, the one from the desk, showed 61 entries. Emily and Jonah were 27. What had happened to the others? And who was 61? Denham opened a fresh caseboard. She pinned their names in the center, drew red thread to every anomaly, every survivor's report, every lost phone call, every whisper. And then, in the middle of the night, something new arrived. Another envelope. No return address. Inside, a single Polaroid. It showed the back of Denham's office door. She stared at the Polaroid for a long time before moving, not because she was frozen by fear, but because something about it didn't make sense. The image was crisp, recent, taken from just behind where her desk chair would be. It showed the door, slightly ajar, with her coat still hanging from the hook, a sliver of hallway visible beyond. Fluorescent light bleeding in like a thin blade. There was no mistaking that this had been taken from inside her office. It wasn't just the proximity. It was the intimacy. The angle was too deliberate, the focus too clean. Whoever had taken it hadn't rushed. They'd waited for the right moment, for symmetry. The hallway glow, the jacket's fold, the way the office chair was turned just slightly, not fully abandoned, but not prepared for someone's return either. She swept the space in a panic, heart kicking her ribs like a warning bell. She tore through her office like someone had hidden a secret there, and she was the last to know. She checked the locks, vents, ceiling tiles, under the desk. Nothing was broken, nothing forced, no wires out of place. The windows hadn't been touched, and still, someone had been there. She ran straight to the surveillance room, demanded access to the camera feeds, watched hours of footage in real time, fast-forwarded, rewound. Nothing. The cameras covering her wing of the department hadn't recorded a single figure out of place. No unauthorized entries, no shadows passing, no flickers of motion, just blank, routine silence. But someone had been there, watched, waited. The envelope that had held the Polaroid was unmarked, a cheap manila kind, bought in bulk. She sent it for lab testing. The response came back the next day. No fingerprints, no hair, no fibers. No prints on the photo itself. Whoever delivered it had left no trace. The kind of careful that doesn't come from impulse. The kind that comes from repetition. Denham changed the locks the next morning, added a bolt, took down the framed commendations that hung near her door, too many reflective surfaces. But sleep didn't return. Not after that. Not once she understood what it meant. 3 nights later, she returned to the photo again, poured herself a drink and stared through a jeweler's loop at every edge, every inch of grain. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. It was the hunt. Then she saw it. On the left edge of the frame, barely caught in the reflection of the glass window, inset in the door, a face, out of focus, obscured, but unmistakable. A man, sunglasses, ball cap, baseball cap, and on the uniform, the faintest outline of a patch. Property of Divide Services. Her breath caught. The same man, the tunnel ghost, the figure who stood in the shadows of everything she was now chasing. She brought the photo to the FBI's digital forensics team in Albuquerque. They enhanced it, clarified pixels, ran it through every face-matching algorithm on record. No matches. Not in state employment. Not in federal background checks. Not in military databases. Not even in old census archives. It was like he didn't exist. But she knew better. Because that man had walked her halls, sat in her chair, taken a photo of her door, and left without being seen. It wasn't the act itself that terrified her. It was the implication he hadn't hidden. He'd simply moved through the space as if he belonged, as if he owned it. She started noticing other things. A post-it on her dashboard with handwriting that wasn't hers. 717 mirror shift. A single envelope in her home mailbox, addressed only to the watcher. Inside, a mirror shard, thin and clean, wrapped in gauze like something removed during surgery. Etched on its surface, with surgical precision, was a number. There was no context, no message, just the number. The list had ended at 61. But now, she was part of it. A warning, a threat, an invitation. She logged the harassment as anonymous contact, told no one else, not officially. But she knew, deep down, in the part of her that refused to go near her bedroom mirror at night, she knew. The system hadn't ended. The notebook hadn't closed. Somewhere, someone was still watching, still curating, still writing. So she went back to the crawl space under the bluff. Alone, armed with a fresh flashlight, fresh recorder, and batteries she tested 3 times before leaving. The wind screamed above her, but inside the earth, it was dead, quiet, too quiet. Not just soundless, but breathless, like even the rock was holding still to listen. She crawled the 53 feet she'd mapped weeks earlier, hands brushing cold stone, knees aching from pressure. At the end, she turned off the light. Total darkness. And then she waited. For a sound. Anything. First came silence. Then tick. Not rhythmic, not loud, but real. She clicked on the recorder. Her voice cracked as she asked, "Who is writing the list?" Nothing. Then a hum. Mechanical, distant, like something old waking up. A thud. Then static. She snapped the recorder off, backed out, crawled like something was chasing her. Didn't go back for days. But that night, in her apartment, the recorder turned on. She hadn't touched it. No timer set. It played anyway. First, static. Then, a whisper. Not her own. A new voice. They always return. She didn't sleep after that. The next morning, a package waited on her desk. No return address. Inside, another cassette tape. White noise. 30 seconds from the end, Emily's voice. Breathless. "They're coming back," she said. He said the divide reopens when they forget the names. Repeated, like prayer. "Don't forget the names." Then the tape ended with a grinding sound of metal on stone. Denham felt her stomach drop. The divide wasn't just a place. It was a ritual, a mechanism, a system, and someone had turned it back on. She examined the tape label again. It had been mailed 2 days prior, and the postmark was digitally traceable. GPS metadata embedded in the scanned label. Coordinates. She ran them. Pine Hollow, a ghost town, 78 miles west of Severance Bend. No modern map listed it, but a mining registry from 1913 did. Population, 61. The same number. She didn't tell her superiors, didn't request backup. She packed her bag, checked her batteries, and drove into the desert alone at dawn. The road narrowed. Gravel gave way to sand, sand to dust. Then nothing. But she found it. A marker. Stone. Half sunk. One word carved. Divide. Nothing else. No buildings. No signs. Just her. And the wind. And the ticking. Faint, subterranean. She stood still. Didn't move. Then, footsteps behind her. Soft. Too soft. She turned. No one. But something lay in the dirt. A Polaroid. Fresh. Still developing. It showed her, standing at the marker, taken from behind. And in the distance, barely visible, a figure. Bald cap. Watching. Waiting. Denham picked up the photo. It was warm in her hands, the chemical sheen still fresh, still finishing its transformation from ghost to memory. Her figure was clear, arms loose at her sides, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes cast downward toward the sun-bleached marker, as if she already knew something was wrong. But what chilled her wasn't that the photo had been taken. It wasn't even that it had been left there, waiting for her. It was the angle. It wasn't from the trail. It was from above, slightly elevated, looking down not from over her shoulder, but from an impossible vantage point. She squinted at the background. There were no nearby hills, no water towers, no cliffs. The desert around Pine Hollow was flat, barren in all directions, like a forgotten canvas scraped clean by time. She turned in slow, careful circles, letting her eyes scan the horizon. Nothing. No movement, no figures, no shimmer of glass or camera lens. No people. No footprints. No tire tracks. Even the sand seemed undisturbed, like it had been combed over. The wind began to rise quiet at first, a whispering exhale. It tugged at the edges of her coat and rustled over the stone marker's face. It made a strange sound as it passed over the carved letters, like whispering teeth. That's when she noticed the ground beside the marker had been disturbed. Subtle, barely visible, unless you were standing right on top of it. She dropped to one knee, pressed her fingers to the sand. Cool, loose. She brushed gently with her palm until something coarse caught beneath her fingernails. A second line of text, carved smaller, beneath the word David. Archive 62, active. The cuts were shallow but sharp, not worn down, not aged. It hadn't been there long. This was recent. Fresh. Made for her. Her chest tightened. There was no sound, no light, no movement, yet something in the air around her shifted. Not a breeze. A presence. Like something ancient had turned its gaze toward her. She stood slowly. No sudden moves. Left the marker behind like it might bite if she stayed too long. But she wasn't finished. Before returning to her vehicle, she walked 50 measured paces north, retracing the directions scrawled on Emily's hand-drawn map from the 1994 case file. Her boots crunched through dry earth and brittle brush. Each step felt rehearsed, like her feet were moving towards something her conscious mind hadn't yet agreed to. And then she saw it. Buried under a thin layer of sand, half covered in desert brush, was an opening. Smaller than the first crawl space, but clearly not natural. An entrance. Cut stone lining the edge. She knelt again, brushed more away, revealing steps. Not formed by erosion or time, these had been carved, deliberate, leading downward, into the earth. She swallowed, turned on her recorder, voice low and steady despite the hammering in her chest. This is Detective Laura Denham. Pine Hollow location. Discovered substructure beneath divide marker. I'm proceeding inside. She descended. The temperature dropped fast. The light above narrowed to a slit. The air grew heavy with dust and memory. At the base of the steps, a metal door. Industrial. Seamless. Bolted shut with a 4-digit keypad. She didn't hesitate. Tried the year. 1994. Nothing. Then, instinctively, 62. Click. A green light blinked to life, faint against the concrete wall. The door hissed open. Inside, rows of filing cabinets. Dustless. Too clean. No cobwebs. No insect noise. A desk stood at the center, lit by a single flickering lamp. A box sat neatly on its surface. Inside, cassette tapes. Each labeled, each numbered, each bearing a name. 1 Anthony D. 2 Miriam L. Blank. 27 Rourke. E. Bell. J. 61 Hildebrand. C. And at the very end of the row, 62 Denham L. Her breath left her in a sharp, trembling rush. Her hands hovered, then reached. She pulled the drawer. Inside, photographs. Dozens. Of her, walking to her car, sitting at her desk, sleeping in her apartment. Some in black and white, others with the faint discoloration of early digital capture. All time-stamped, all recent. Her stomach turned. She backed away, knees buckling. The door behind her sealed with a hiss. The sound echoed like a closing vault. The light flickered again once, twice, then steadied. From the far end of the room, a reel-to-reel tape machine powered up. The tape was already loaded. It began to play. A male voice. Calm. Even. You made it. Most don't. Most stop at the mirror. Click. I've been watching you watch. I was curious. You broke the loop. Click. But the archive doesn't close. The archive remembers. Click. You are the 60. Twond. And the next. The tape stopped, then rewound itself, and began playing backward. Distorted voices. The hum again. The ticking. Denham's hand shot to her belt, reached for the flashlight. Gone. She turned. No exits. Just cabinets. Just drawers. And in the far corner, a mirror. Tall, narrow, untouched. She approached. Her reflection waited. Still. Then blinked. But she hadn't. She stood frozen. It blinked again. And smiled. She stepped back. The reflection didn't. Her hand moved to her chest and found the recorder. Dead. No battery. No recording. She was off the grid. Out of time. A light snapped on behind the mirror. Bright. Surgical. Revealing the man. Baseball cap. Sunglasses. Uniform. The patch glowed under the red glow. Divide maintenance. He lifted a camera. Took one photo. Flash. The mirror went black. The room followed. And Denham stood alone in the dark, no longer an investigator, but an entry, a number, an active file. The first thing she remembered when she came to was the sound of tape unspooling, that soft whispering of magnetic film pulling free from its reel, looping itself into a loose, curling mess across the cold floor. That sound didn't belong to the present, it belonged to memory, to the kind of moment that insists you're still dreaming, still locked behind someone else's eyes. The room around her had changed. The low yellow light that had once lit the archive was now dimmer, unfocused, like it was filtering through water. The cabinets that had stood open in neat rows were now closed. The mirror that had reflected not just her face, but something else, something behind her eyes, was gone. She blinked slowly. Her flashlight sat beside her right hand, neatly placed, angled just so. Not dropped, not fumbled, placed. But her recorder was missing. She stood slowly, half expecting to feel pain in her joints or bruises down her arms, but there were none. No marks, no scratches, no soreness. Just a sense of distance. Like she'd been underwater, breathing in the silence for too long, and only now breaking the surface. She turned slowly, scanning the room. Then she noticed the real change. The tapes were gone. Every drawer had been opened, every cassette removed. What remained in their place was a single note taped with precision to the wall behind the desk. The paper was clean, centered, untorn. It read, "You were never meant to find this, but now that you have, you will remember it for us." The handwriting was small, precise, all uppercase, uniform strokes, no slant, no flare. Not printed, not scribbled, measured, cold. Beneath it, smaller still, "Don't forget their names." She stared at it for several seconds before her knees finally gave out. She sat hard against the floor, the cold crawling through her jeans like fingers. Then she stood, almost mechanically, and stumbled her way back up the steps. Back to the open air. Back to the sun. The desert looked unchanged, as if time had frozen while she'd been underground. The sky was the same hard blue, the rocks unchanged, but something felt wrong. Lifeless. Like the world was holding its breath. Her car sat exactly where she'd left it, except the driver's side door was ajar. Not wide open, just enough to break the seal. A small, deliberate invitation. On the dashboard, an envelope, not sealed, not addressed. She opened it. Inside, a Polaroid. Still glossy, still warm. It showed her slumped asleep at the desk in the archive, her hand still resting beside the empty space where the recorder should have been. Written in black marker, 60, To field status. Active. Her hands trembled as she turned the photo over. Nothing on the back. She got into the car but didn't start the engine. She sat there for a long time. Then she drove. But not home. Not yet. She stopped 3 times along the way. Once beside a dead Joshua tree, its limbs black and splintered like bone. Then again near a half-collapsed water tower that leaned toward the horizon like it wanted to fall but couldn't remember how. And finally, just outside Severance Bend, beside a rusted road sign half swallowed by sand. Each stop, she pulled the Polaroid out again. Each time, it felt heavier in her hands. As if it wasn't just a photo. As if it knew something. As if it remembered her. She made it back to the station just before dusk. Didn't speak to anyone. Didn't make eye contact. She walked to her office, closed the door, locked it twice, then pulled every blind until the room was dark. She sat at her desk and began to write. She wrote until her hand cramped, until her knuckles ached. Every detail, every name, every sound. She recreated the archive from memory, every cabinet, every label, the numbers, the placements. Something in her needed it on paper. Needed to pull it out of herself, like a splinter too deep to see. When she finally stopped, hours later, she found a mirror in her apartment, turned slightly off-angle. It faced the hallway now. She didn't remember moving it. She approached slowly. There was something taped behind it. A photograph. Emily, standing in front of the same marker at Pine Hollow, taken from above. The caption in fading black ink. 27. Final observation. 10.2694. Denham dropped it. Let it fall to the floor. She didn't pick it up for hours. When she did, her hands shook. Back in her journal, a new sentence had appeared. She hadn't written it. Some archives don't close. They go quiet. The next morning, she packed a single duffel bag. Turned in her badge without explanation. Didn't offer a resignation. Just left. No destination. No map. Her final official act was submitting a request for the crawlspace beneath the divide marker to be sealed with state-ordered concrete. Filed under geological instability. She never looked back. But others did. Because it didn't stop with her. People across the country began receiving anonymous packages. Cassette tapes, VHS reels, photographs. All numbered, all labeled, all bearing names no one remembered until they were forced to. A podcaster in Kentucky received a tape of a woman singing lullabies in a locked room. A hiker in Oregon unearthed a box buried beneath a fire tower. Inside, a journal filled with reversed handwriting, written as if by someone trying not to be understood. A motel clerk in Utah found an envelope beneath his bed. Inside, a photo of himself, asleep. Captioned, 73. None of them understood. Not at first. But the pattern was clear. Someone was still watching. Still recording. And the list was still growing. In March 2015, Camilla Brenner, a private investigator, launched an online database documenting references to the divide in historical disappearance cases. She logged 61 confirmed overlaps. Then, her name appeared on a subreddit for cold cases. 74. Brenner C. Her profile went dark the same day. No goodbye post. No deleted tweets. Her apartment was untouched. Phone still charging. Coffee cup half full. Just gone. Denham read about it from a diner 3 states away. A folded newspaper, greasy thumbprint across the edge. She looked up. In the booth behind her, by the window, a man, sunglasses, baseball cap, reading nothing, just sitting. She didn't move, didn't breathe. Then the jukebox clicked on. A familiar hiss. Neil Young. The same cassette track from Emily and Jonah's car. Mid-reel, as if it had never stopped playing. She stood up slowly. Left the diner. her hands barely steady enough to grab the keys. On the windshield, tucked under the wiper, a photo of her, sitting at the counter, coffee in hand. Caption, 60, 2 field status, stable. And for the first time, she wondered not who was watching, but how long they had been. She kept driving after that, didn't stop to eat, didn't speak to anyone, didn't play music, just the hum of tires on asphalt and the occasional groan of her engine struggling through the desert wind. She only stopped for gas when the needle screamed empty, and even then, she kept her eyes down, avoided conversation, didn't look in any mirrors. Because the further she got from Pine Hollow, the more it followed her not just as a memory, but as a presence. She felt it in the corners of things, in the way the world hesitated just slightly when she turned her head, in reflections that lasted too long, in the dull pressure behind her eyes as though something were trying to press forward from within. Mirrors began to feel off. Not malicious, not exactly, just aware. She'd catch her reflection looking a fraction too late, holding its gaze an instant too long. When she blinked, it didn't always blink with her. At night, it got worse. Not nightmares, not really. These weren't dreams. They were visits. She always woke up in the same place. A white room. No doors. No windows. Only 2 objects. A tall, narrow mirror and a reel-to-reel tape player, hissing quietly in the corner, like it had been running long before she arrived. In the mirror, she saw herself, still staring. But from the player, another voice would emerge. Not hers, not now. Emily Rourke, test 14. Time reset confirmed. Subject aware. Subject stable. Then a pause. Jonah Bell, test 15. Subject denial persists. Requires memory reduction. Then, Rourke, Bell loop incomplete. Retention point marked. See file, 27B. Each night, it ended the same way. Silence, thick and heavy. And then, just before she opened her eyes, she'd hear it. Someone whispering her name. Not from the dream, not from memory. From right beside her. Breath not her own. She stayed in motels, switched cities every week, changed cars when she could afford to, paid in cash, but the envelopes still found her. Always on the second night, always unmarked, left on the nightstand. Each one contained a single Polaroid. Each showed someone new, a face she'd never seen, a location she'd never been, a number scrawled in marker, a name. She didn't recognize any of them at first. But over time, the names started appearing in the real world. Obituaries, missing persons reports, obscure forum threads. She began writing them down, not out of obligation, out of instinct. She didn't know why, only that it felt necessary, as if her memory had become part of the archive, as if she wasn't observing anymore. She was the record. The last envelope she received broke the pattern. No photo, just a torn scrap of notebook paper. One sentence, "You're the mirror now." She burned it in the motel sink. Watched the flame eat the words, turn them black. Didn't matter. The next day, a boy no older than 12 approached her at a gas station pump. He held out a cassette tape wrapped in wax paper. Said simply, "The man in the hat told me to give you this." She knelt beside him, asked, "What man?" The boy just pointed to the highway. Flat horizon, dust. No one. She took the tape, drove for miles before playing it. Emily's voice again. Soft, fragile, but not afraid. "I don't know how long I've been here. Days don't feel like days. I thought I heard Jonah, but the mirror only shows me. I talk to it. I don't know if it listens." Then a pause. "I think I'm being remembered. I think someone is waking up." The tape hissed. Then a single piano key. Struck. Twice. Then the watcher sleeps. The mirror keeps. She pulled the car over, turned off the engine, stepped out onto the shoulder. There, in the gas station window beside her, her reflection. Still, unmoving, not breathing. Then, after 5 long seconds, it smiled. But she didn't. She stopped using mirrors after that, stopped wearing makeup, cut her own hair with scissors in motel bathrooms, brushed her teeth facing the wall, used the reflection in spoons only when necessary. But they still found her. Puddles after rain, storefront glass, the back of soup ladles, payphone chrome. Each time, she saw someone new. Not her. Not Emily. Sometimes a child. Sometimes a woman with no eyes. Sometimes nothing but teeth. But always, watching, she began referring to herself as nobody. Signed receipts that way, scribbled it on envelopes, used it as a name when checking into motels. It helped. A little. Made the edges quieter. Until she found a note on her pillow, written in the same uppercase letters from the archive wall. Even nobody gets a number. Underneath, 77. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. Let it settle. She wasn't the last. Someone had come after her. And then another. 78. 79. The numbers were climbing. People were noticing. Forums appeared, Reddit threads, blogs. Ghost hunters chasing mirror anomalies. Sound engineers dissecting distorted reel-to-reel clips. A few of them got close. Too close. One user posted photos from a sealed bunker in Nevada. Tapes. Dozens. Labeled with initials and handwritten tags. He uploaded a video. A shaky walkthrough of narrow concrete corridors. Rust-streaked walls. Shelves upon shelves of magnetic tape. He opened one cabinet. Pulled out a manila folder. Inside, a photo of himself. Asleep. Same bedspread, same clothes. When he turned the camera to the mirror behind him, the video cut to static. His account was deleted within hours. No archived version. No username trace. Just gone. But Denham saw it. Saved a still. Added the initials to her notebook. She wasn't afraid anymore. Just waiting. Waiting for the system to end. But it never did. And then, one night, at exactly 3:00 a.m., her phone rang. An unknown number. She answered without thinking. Static. Then, Emily's voice. Clearer than it had ever been. Almost present. Don't forget the names. A pause. Then, you're not watching them. They're watching you. Click. She didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. The voice echoed too loudly, not in the room, but somewhere behind her ears, folded into the quiet rhythms of her heartbeat, pulsing between the silence of her breaths. It wasn't just sound, it was something inserted, something placed deep inside her that kept humming when the world went still. She sat cross-legged on the motel bed, a cheap floral bedspread bunched around her like waves. Her eyes stayed locked on the door, barely blinking. The TV was off, the lights dim. Her laptop was open but idle, screen brightness turned low. Every few minutes, she refreshed the same forum post. The divide? Disappearance patterns? Even though she knew it had been deleted hours ago. She did it anyway. Habit, maybe. Or hope. And then at 3:37 a.m., the screen flickered. A new post. No username, no avatar, no post history. Just a black box and a single line of white text. 80. Breathing stable. Loop open. Welcome, Laura. She stared. Didn't type. Didn't move. But seconds later, other responses appeared. 81. Witness confirmed. 82. Initial memory fracture logged. And then, 83. Under mirror protocol. Field observer unstable. Each post disappeared almost as soon as it arrived. Deleted in real time, but not before she screen captured them, hand trembling slightly, as she pressed the keys. She didn't understand the hierarchy. Didn't know if the numbers were chosen or assigned. Didn't know if the others were real people or just echoes. But one thing was certain. There was a system, and the system wasn't just watching. It was expanding. It had reached her, assimilated her. She was no longer just observing it. She was part of its infrastructure. She tried to fight the pull, to resist the compulsion. But some instincts feel less like decisions and more like gravity. She knew what she had to do. Return to Severance Bend, to the marker, to where the door had first opened and the list had begun writing itself. She packed quickly, didn't bother folding, just stuffed clothes, batteries, notebooks, and her recorder into a duffel bag. She drove 7 hours without stopping. The sky bled orange as she reached the edge of the bluff, the kind of sunset that feels final, like something closing its eyes. The slab she'd ordered, sealed with concrete months before, was still there. Smooth, flat, uncracked. But the air had changed. The wind wasn't right. It pushed against her skin like it knew her name. She crouched low, pressed a hand to the slab. It was warm, not sun-warmed, radiating, like it had a pulse. She set the recorder down beside it. Waited. She didn't move for hours. The sky turned purple, then black. Stars came out one by one like slow, blinking eyes. Still nothing. Then, just as the moon broke over the ridge, static, the recorder clicked on by itself. She didn't touch it. A voice emerged. Soft, familiar. "You're almost back." Her mouth felt dry as she leaned close. She whispered, "What do you want?" The pause that followed was long, measured. Then, "To be remembered." She shivered, swallowed hard. Tried again. "What is the divide?" More silence. Then, a voice like wind through empty shelves. "It's what's left after forgetting." The tape popped. The recorder shut off. And then, under her knees, the earth shifted. Not dramatically, not like a quake. A subtle vibration, like a breath being drawn beneath the surface. She pressed her palm back to the slab. Warm, throbbing, alive. Then, on the far ridge, a light, single, faint. It blinked once, then again, a third time, then gone. She waited, counted to 10. The light returned, closer now. It pulsed in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Familiar. The same frequency as the old cassette hum, the one from Emily and Jonah's tape. She didn't hesitate. She followed it. The light moved steadily, guiding her back toward the marker. But something had changed. The stone was gone. In its place, a patch of disturbed earth. The sand was loose, unsettled. She dropped to her knees, dug with both hands, fingers raw. 10 inches down, they struck something hard. Metal. A latch. She pulled. It opened with a sigh. Below, stairs. Carved, clean. Fresh stone, smooth and untouched by time. She descended, without pause. The air was cooler, more sterile. LED strips lined the corridor. No decay, no dust. This wasn't abandoned. This was active. At the end, a door. Not bolted, just waiting. A mirror was bolted to its face. She looked into it. Her reflection stared back. Still blank. Then, just as she reached for the handle, it smiled. She didn't. The voice from the glass whispered, "Welcome back, 62." The door clicked open. She stepped inside. It was the same room. Identical to Emily's. White walls. No shadows. A single metal chair. A table. A recorder. And a folded note. She picked it up. Hands steady. It read, "Begin test 84. Memory retention. Time dilation. Observation loop. You know what to do. Beneath it, in smaller print, don't forget the names. She sat, turned on the recorder, and spoke. This is Laura Denham. I remember. For a moment, the mirror stayed blank. Then, a soft light blinked behind it, illuminating a figure. The man from the photo. Same cap, same glasses. But now he removed them, smiled, and said, calm and clear, begin recording. And somewhere behind the glass, the reel began to spin. She doesn't remember what happened after that, or at least not in the way most people remember, like flipping through photo albums, reliving birthdays and bruises and smells of rain through windows. Her memory wasn't chronological anymore. It wasn't a memory at all. What remained were impressions. The antiseptic scent of clean plastic and cold metal, the soft, endless hum of a reel-to-reel spinning in a room without speakers, the way her voice echoed off white walls even when she didn't speak. Not a voice, a resonance. Not sound, just presence. She woke up sitting upright. Her eyes opened without feeling like they ever had been closed. The room looked the same, but only at first. The walls were white again, the shape identical, but something was off. The chair beneath her wasn't wood anymore. It was metal polished, heavy, impossibly still. The lighting buzzed faintly, artificial in a way that made her skin itch. And the mirror no longer showed her reflection. It showed someone else. Still her. Same clothes, same tangled hair, same hollow beneath the eyes. But the expression was wrong. This version of her was crying. Silently. Tears slipping down the cheek without effort, without sound. Her mouth moved slowly, like someone speaking underwater. Laura leaned forward, breath shallow. Tried to read the lips. 3 words. They're not mirrors. The moment she understood the phrase, the lights cut out. The hum died. Everything went black. And then, behind her, the door opened. A long hallway appeared, lit in sickly yellow. The corridor was flanked by glass windows, each one a frame into another room, another version of the same space. Each room was occupied. She moved slowly, walking barefoot on the cold tile. One room showed a man standing motionless, arms limp at his side, eyes locked on a camera. Another someone pacing in circles, fingers twitching, eyes wide like prey. Another fists hammering silently against the glass, screaming, but no sound. No sound at all. Then, a child, no older than 10, sitting cross-legged on the floor, drawing perfect circles on the wall with a red crayon, never looking up, never stopping. Then, a woman whispering into a blank cassette tape, rocking back and forth like she was trying to remember a song from childhood. Then, Jonah, or a man who used to be him, thinner, paler, a faint shake in his hands. He sat on the floor, staring at a photograph like it was the only anchor he had left. She stepped closer to the glass, pressed her forehead to it. He didn't move. Then he raised the photo to the window. It was Emily, smiling, captioned, 27, complete. Laura whispered, I'm sorry. Jonah blinked, then flickered, like a television with bad reception, and vanished, replaced by another figure. Someone she didn't know, and then another. The hallway curved. At its end, a vault door. No label, no lock, just heavy, gray, and waiting. She pushed it open. No resistance. Inside, the archive. The real one. Not a metaphor. Not a memory. A space that existed. Shelves stretched to the ceiling. Cassettes. VHS tapes. Photos. Stacks of notebooks. Polaroids clipped to wires. Mirrors hung like trophies, their surfaces dustless and still. And in the center, a single chair, facing a bank of monitors. Each screen showed a live feed, Some were empty, others active. She recognized them. A bedroom, hers. A street corner in Santa Fe. A diner she'd eaten at in Missouri. A child's playroom, each labeled, each tagged, each indexed. She approached the console, laid out across its surface a master ledger. She opened it, page after page of names, each one carefully written, each struck through with a single black line, except one. Her own. Denham, Laura. Status, active observer. Her breath hitched. She turned to the final page. There was a date, tomorrow's, and beneath it, a word, retired. She flipped again. Blank page. Except letters began to appear, typing themselves into place. She watched the ink form from nowhere. Your memory is the archive. Thank you for your service. She stepped back, shook her head, whispered, I didn't agree to this. A pause. Then the paper responded. You did, the moment you remembered. The door behind her sealed with a hiss. Lights dimmed. Another mirror flickered to life on the far wall. Her reflection returned, but it was different now. No lag, no delay, no smile. Just watching, just waiting. She sat down in the chair. The metal adjusted beneath her like it had been shaped just for her. A prompt blinked across the console. Begin file 84? She hesitated. Then typed, yes. A tape clicked on. It wasn't from today. It wasn't even from the last decade. It was from 23 years ago. A home video. She was 12, sitting cross-legged on the floor of her old bedroom, singing softly to herself. The camera wobbled in someone's hand. Then, a knock at the door. Her father's voice. Laura, time for bed. Except, that was impossible. He had died a year before that tape was made. She'd watched it dozens of times. There was never a knock, never a voice. But now, in this version, there was. And something else. In the window behind her younger self, a figure, standing, still, watching, ball cap, sunglasses, smiling. She reached for the pause button. It didn't work. The screen wouldn't respond. The controls were dead. A new prompt appeared. Observe your beginning. The lights dimmed again. The room turned dark as oil. And for the first time she understood. She hadn't discovered the archive. She had always been part of it. This system wasn't keeping her. It was completing her. Every dream, every photograph, every whisper. They weren't clues. They were coordinates. And now, finally, her file was ready. The final room was quiet, deceptively peaceful. There were no blinking lights, no hum of old machinery, no clicking tape reels or blinking monitors, just silence and a single desk. On it, an analog tape recorder and a new, unused cassette still in its plastic wrap, the kind you might have found in a gas station clearance bin in 1994. She sat slowly. The chair was too familiar, worn in the right places, bent just slightly, as if it remembered her. On the desk lay one more photograph, unlabeled, but she knew what it was. Emily and Jonah, standing in front of the Severance Bend rest stop, smiles hesitant, eyes drawn just a little too wide. The same photo the podcast had published, the one on the subreddit. But here, in this version, a third person stood in the background, barely visible. In shadow, a figure with a camera. Laura turned the photo over. A message had been scrawled in pencil. There's always someone watching, until the next one watches you. She peeled the plastic from the cassette, inserted it into the recorder, pressed record, and began to speak. This is Laura Denham, Observer 62, final entry. She took a deep breath. They called it a rest stop, but it was never meant for rest. It was meant to pause you, to catalog you, to ask you who you thought you were before the mirrors started showing something else. She paused. I don't know what the divide is. Not really. But I know what it does. It waits. It copies. It hides you inside your own reflection and makes the world forget until someone digs you back up again. But by then, you've changed. You've shifted. Another breath. I've seen them. All of them. Jonah, Emily, the woman with no mouth, the boy who draws in circles. I don't know if they're alive, I don't know if I am. But their names mattered. They mattered because they were remembered. And that's the only thing this place can't erase. Not completely. She sat in silence for a moment. Then, one last statement. If you find this, write it down. Say their names. Read them out loud. Don't let them fade. She clicked stop. The cassette whirred back into stillness. She stood, walked to the mirror across the room. It was no longer a mirror. It was a window. Beyond it, shelves. Dozens of tapes. All labeled. All stacked neatly. The system. Still working. Still alive. She reached out and touched the glass. Felt warmth. Then a flicker of static. Her reflection appeared for the final time. It blinked. Then opened its mouth. Spoke 3 words she didn't say. You're remembered now. The glass shimmered. Split down the middle. Behind it, a staircase. Going nowhere. Just into light. And then the door behind her closed. Sealed with a hiss. Tape clicked again. And a new file was logged. 84 Denham, L. Archived. The console light turned green. On a separate screen, a new name appeared. No photo. No information. Just the designation. 85 status. Pending. Somewhere, someone else was already looking into a mirror. Already finding a photo tucked into their mailbox. Already hearing a voice behind static. And soon, they would remember something that never happened. Would uncover something no one believed. Would follow coordinates not written down. Would receive a package. Would press play. And the divide would open again. Because it always does. And always will. Until someone remembers long enough to close it. But no one ever does. Because the mirror keeps. And the watcher sleeps. And the archive never forgets.